Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am just beyond excited because I get a moment to introduce to you the newest distress color, Scorched Timber. Tim Holtz created the Scorched Timber color for Ranger ink, and it is the last of the current set of 12 colors that he had launched back in 2020. And I'm so grateful that scrapbook.com sent me these colors and products in advance to play with and make some projects with. So stay tuned. I've got some news and some tips for you when using this new Scorched Timber color. Now this color, of course, is going to be available as a distress ink, as an oxide ink as well. It'll be available as the Distress Spray Stain along with the Distress Oxide Spray. So you're going to get those offerings for your product. You're of course going to be able to get your Distress Paint in Scorched Timber. There will be re-inkers available both for the Distress inks and for the Oxide inks. There will be a Distress glaze, an embossing glaze that you'll be able to use in the Scorched Timber color. And then also there is a pin available for the Scorched Timber as well. There is also going to be a new set of 3 Distress Crayons. It looks like this is Scorched Timber, Lumberjack Plaid, and Lost Shadow together. And it will be part of the newest Distress Ink mini ink set, including Uncharted Mariner, Lumberjack Plaid, Lost Shadow, and now Scorched Timber. I did also want to go ahead and take a moment to introduce the new Tiny Distress blending tool. This is going to be fantastic for tiny detailed ink blending and also with using it for stencils. I'm using my travel media mat and I'm going to use a piece of mixed media paper to go ahead and blend out both of the inks. So I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to blend the Distress Oxides onto the panel. So I'm going to dab off my excess and I'm just going to go ahead and blend a nice circle for you. As you can see, this is definitely a brown color, but as brown has it, there is a little bit of greenish, earthier tones in this color as well. It's a great color that's going to be used for some neutrals. It's not going to be the darkest Distress Oxide ink. I do think Ground Espresso is going to be bigger, but you're going to see when you use it as a distress ink, it also is going to be very dark. I mean, just look at the color of the ink pad itself. It almost looks like it would be black. So you're going to go ahead, you're going to blend it on. I wanted to compare the 2 different colors to you. It is just a really nice dark brown. Maybe getting a little bit of taupe vibes from it, maybe a little bit of gray to it, but this is just a really fantastic color. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to write in the different colors so I can go ahead and compare these 2 to you. Don't forget though that the oxides always are going to be lighter in appearance than the distress inks, and that's just because of how they are as inks in nature. Oxides are a hybrid ink that tends to sit more on the surface of the paper and then dry, while distress inks are dye inks and they almost immediately begin to saturate the paper and they get dark, and the distress inks just are a darker ink because of that. So here you can see them side by side, and it's going to give you a good idea about what to expect when using the different colors. Now I am going to grab some mixed media paper by scrapbook.com, and I'm going to grab it in both black and in white. And the reason for that is we're going to do a little bit of experimentation and play around with our Scorched Timber Distress Oxide Spray. If you don't know already, oxide sprays and oxide inks can be used on darker cardstock. They may not be the exact true to color that you'd get on white, but you are still going to get some sort of an effect. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to spray them on both panels, and then I'm also going to use my heat tool to go ahead and get these colors nice and set. Of course, I did speed it up just a little bit, just so you don't have to almost literally watch paint dry. So after I have my oxide sprays all set onto the paper, I just want to show you, look at that dark black paper and how that Scorched Timber spray looks. You can definitely still see it on top, and that's just such a fun effect. But of course, it's going to show up fantastic on that white cardstock as well. So there you have it, just a really fun way that you can use your oxide sprays with 2 different colored types of paper. Now, of course, let's go ahead and play a little bit with the Distress Spray Stain, and I'm just going to spray it right onto a white panel. And I'm getting some really fun splatter marks. I'm going to actually go ahead and set this off to the side, and we're going to use it for the card that we're going to go ahead and make later today. let's go ahead and play a little bit with the distress paint. I'm going to use that same white mixed media paper and just go ahead and brush it as thin as I can, just to let you see how that distress paint is going to look as you use it. If you wanted to use it for any sort of a painting, this would also work really well for any sort of like a splattering for your project as well. So just look at that. You're going to see how those brown colors come in. Of course, I've got some chunky strokes going on, so they're not all consistent. I want to play with the embossing glaze next, so I'm using the embossing dauber, and I'm going to go ahead and do some heat embossing right now just to show you how awesome this Distress embossing glaze looks when used. It's so shiny. It's just, oh, I love this color. You can really see a little bit of that green come through when you're using it as an embossing glaze as well. And if you guessed it correctly, I am also going to be using this panel later on for a project as well. Now going back to this Distress spray stain panel, I'm going to go ahead and use my trimmer to cut this diagonally as perfectly in half as I can. And I'm going to use this for the card that I'm creating. Now I'm grabbing the Cozy Pattern paper pad. This is an A2 size by scrapbook.com, and I've decided that this green striped pattern is going to work really well with the Scorched Timber color that we're going to be focusing on for this project. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take some antique brass Distress spray stain, and I'm going to go ahead and just splatter this right onto my panels. I love to do a little bit of extra splattering just for a good little accent piece for the images, add a little bit of interest to it, and I love those pops of metallic. I'm going back in and I'm grabbing that embossing glaze piece, and I'm going to grab this large rub-on transfer. This is the Retro Garden Rub-On Transfer by scrapbook.com, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut out this big flower that says hello in the middle, and we're going to apply it to the open white space of the panel. I'm going to go ahead and use the provided popsicle stick to go ahead and rub and transfer this to the panel. I love using the rub-on transfers by scrapbook.com. They're a great way to add a fun detail to your project without having to do the die cutting, having to do the coloring or the stamping. They're just there and ready for you. So I've peeled my top off, and what I'm going to go ahead and do next is use the circle wafer nested dies from scrapbook.com. I'm going to use the one closest fit to the size of this flower and use some of my mint tape to go ahead and tack it down, and we'll go ahead and die cut this out. This is going to really make this little flower pop nicely on our panel, and then it's going to just be center stage. I'm going to go ahead, process this through my die cutting machine, and then I'm going to go ahead and use my Distress Oxide ink for Scorched Timber and blend a nice large circle on some mixed media cardstock by scrapbook.com. I'm just trying to keep it a nice big open circle, and then I am going to go ahead, I'm going to splatter some water to get some bleach marks, and I'm going to show you next what it's going to look like when I pick up the water with a rather dirty craft towel. So I'm going to go ahead, pick it up, and you're going to see how wonderful all of those bleach marks look, and that they add some nice detail to this die cut circle that we're going to be doing in just a second. So we'll go ahead and process this through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 in black, and we're also then going to take this circle and use the Scorched Timber Distress ink just to go ahead and distress the edges of the die cut. I think this was going to add a very nice dark effect to the different tones of the circle, and it gives us an excuse to both use Distress ink and Oxide ink. Just make sure that when you're using your Distress ink and your Oxide ink that you're not using the same tool, as you don't want to cross-contaminate your colors. Using my Misty Precision Glue Press, I'm going to go ahead and paste that circle of the flower right on top of our ink blended circle. I'm going to apply some pressure using a large acrylic block, and then that panel is ready to go. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my Misty Precision Glue Press and adhere my triangle of my Distress spray stain on top of that green striped panel piece that we had worked with earlier from the Cozy Pattern paper collection from scrapbook.com. I want to add a stripe effect to my project, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab this sort of burnt orange color that's provided in the pack, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut 2 strips from this panel. I'm going to cut them both as 1/4 of an inch, And the reason I'm doing this now, of course, these pattern paper collections do come in a 6x8 size that would eliminate the need for me to do this. I don't want to have to reach for an extra project, and I knew that I could hide a seam when I meet these two together underneath that hello circle piece that's going to be the focal image. So you're going to see what I'm going to do with that in a second. So I'm going to take both of these strips, I'm going to adhere them down to my panel. Of course, I used my Misty Precision Glue Press to do so, and I'm going to go ahead and put both of these strips into place, kind of butting them up back to back, making them go from corner to corner, and then I'm going to make sure that my circle can be placed in an area of the card that's going to hide that center seam. So I'm going to trim off the excess of the edges, and that way I'm going to get a perfect A2 size. And I did want to add a couple more rub-on embellishments. So I'm grabbing some flowers and some butterflies. I'm just carefully selecting which colors I think are going to work very nicely. I love that there are colors in this retro garden rub-on set that coordinate with the cozy paper collection that we selected as well. I love that there's some oranges in that little flower cluster in the bottom right corner. So I'm just really excited to use these for some additional embellishment. So I'm just going to go ahead now. I'm going to use my popsicle stick tool to rub all of the pieces into place. Of course, this is sped up quite a bit. You don't need to see me in actual time applying all of these rub-on transfers, but I'm just very carefully making sure to go in that everything is all put into place just the way I want it, and then I can remove the backing pieces. Y'all know I do love my foam tape, and I did decide I wanted to give my center circle a little bit of lifted dimension. So I'm applying some 1/16 of an inch foam tape to the back of my circle for pretty close to full coverage. And then once I have all of my foam strips into place, I'm going to go ahead, remove the backing of my foam tape, and work it into position. We're going to get this as centered as we can on the card, and it's just going to pop really nicely now. And that's it. That is the card that we created using the brand new Scorched Timber Distress color from Tim Holtz. Thank you guys so very much for stopping by my channel today to check out this new sneak peek, and a huge thank you to scrapbook.com for sending me these products in advance to give me a chance to create with them. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and use the affiliate links in the description below for any of your distress product shopping. Thank you so much once again. Happy crafting. Goodbye.